myths and things that are not supported by research evidence. Let me give you an example. Men are smarter than women. This is not true anymore. You want some proof? Here you go. That's the proof that women actually are smarter than men. If you want further proof, I didn't say this. It's this guy who is an expert on, IQ testing and things like that. He's a psychologist. He is very well known for his work, and he has this to say: women now, it has been shown to be smarter than women. Tonight, when you go home, tell your husband that your husband. Let me give you an example in the area of English language teaching. Authentic materials. For many, many years, I was one of them. For many, many years, people have tended to believe that authentic materials is the way to go. This is something that a lot of people actually believe. The use of authentic materials promotes learner autonomy, creativity, and improves language learning. Is that a myth or a fact, do you think? Is that a fact? I used to believe that it was a fact because of this. Because the professional literature actually full of statements, claims, and so on that keeps on telling us that authentic materials will make you a smart student. You will become an autonomous learner, you will become a good language learner. Number two, because my professors say so. In fact, I can name a person, a very well-known person who was one of my professors. He said that 20 years ago, that authenticity is very good for language learning. 20 years later, he wrote a paper saying that that's not true.
No.
If you want a special session on that, invite me. I'll tell you why it's not true. Because my colleagues say so, and who am I to disagree? That's the nature of myths. It's a popular belief that a lot of people believe in, but actually when you look at the concept of idea very carefully, then you will find that it's not really true. This is what I'm planning to do with you today. I'm going to discuss some of the stubborn means persistent beliefs that we have about certain ideas in English language teaching. And number two, question their assumptions, and hopefully you and me will be more willing to sort of revise and renew our beliefs. And in line with the theme of the conference, as language teacher educators, I think my discussion may have a lot of implications on what we do in the classroom. Belief number one. I'm going to engage you throughout the presentation. ESL is the same as TEFL. Is that a myth or a fact?
Myth.
Let us look at some of the differences. Again, in the old days when I was a student many years ago, a lot of people told me it's the same thing, ESL, EFL. The only difference is one with S, the other one is with F. They're all the same. The principles are the same. The actual things that you do might be different. That's what I've been told. Let's look at whether they are actually the same or different. In ESL, people need the language almost immediately. In other words, there's a greater need for people to learn and to use the language. Greater, number one, and number two is immediate, langsung, nggak boleh nunggu. Because the moment you learn something, you will have to use it outside the classroom. That is what ESL is all about. ESL refers to places in the US, for example, in Australia, and in many other places where English is predominantly used for wider communication. In EFL situation, like in Indonesia, Do you expect your students to use the language immediately? Do they have any real need to communicate in English? Thank you for agreeing with me. In ESL situations, students can practically learn from anyone, from a lot of people. In EFL, in your classroom in high school, you are probably the only person from whom the students can learn. So you are the only one plus many others who don't speak the language. Next, the goal of ESL is to produce what is known as communicative competence. In EFL, that is not often the case. It's often to pass the examination. If you spend a lot of time helping your students to develop pragmatic competence or communicative competence or whatever, actually you are punishing the students because they won't pass the national examination. Yeah? Many years ago, people introduced the notion of integrative and instrumental motivation. Yeah? Now I know integrative motivation happens only in ESL situations, but not in EFL situation. In EFL, we learn English and we use it as a tool in order to do something else. But not in places like the US. You have to be willing to integrate to some extent to how language is used, to be able to adapt to its culture and things like that. In other words, integrative motivation does not really exist in EFL situations. Next. Now this is interesting. In ESL situation, teacher proficiency is usually quite high. What about EFL situation? Tell me. High? How high? Or how low? I'm not going to respond to this question. I'll leave it to you to respond to that. What about learner proficiency? In ESL situation, most learners of English in ESL situation, not everyone, but the majority have higher proficiency in English. What about EFL situation? Learner proficiency, high or low? How low? How low are you willing to go? It's fairly low. We have to admit that it's fairly low. All these have implications for what we do in the classroom, which I am planning to clarify in the later part of the discussion. So these are some of the things that we need to be aware of. ESL and EFL are fundamentally different. Tidak sama. Beda sekali. We need to be aware of this. More importantly, books. Ini loh, yang penting. Books written by ESL people are often intended for ESL students in ESL situations. When I was younger, I did not really make a distinction. And I mean, boy, I made a big mistake. Yeah? So what I'm suggesting is this, the last point here. ESL ideas are great. They're fine. Yeah? But you cannot just take them and translate them fully into your classroom. You have to understand it, you have to interpret it, you have to redefine it in a way that makes sense to you and your students, because you're dealing with a situation that is very different from ESL situation. Here's an example. Let's give this like 10 seconds to think about. This is an idea from ESL. To what extent can you apply this in EFL situations in Indonesia, for example? Later, I will try to convince you that if you do this too much, I don't think you are doing your students a great service. Yeah? But bear with me for a while. Let me just continue with the other idea here. This is another very familiar idea that has been floating around for many years. You don't have to understand everything you hear or read. Is it a fact or fiction? Because the words have been repeated many times. That's true. But in most situations, you have to understand every word. In particular, if there are many words that you don't understand, then you have to pay attention very carefully so that you understand what the person is trying to say. Yeah? If this point is not clear, I'm going to revisit this a bit later. But these 2 points to me are more myth than fact. Keeping in mind that I'm talking about EFL context with students who are generally of lower proficiency in the English language. Number 2, CLT. Every modern English teacher must say that I use CLT, otherwise your boss will not be too happy. And for many years, we have heard that CLT is one of the most productive methods. Fact or fiction?
Fiction.
It's more fiction than fact to me now. In 1980s, I believed wholeheartedly that communicative language teaching would revolutionize the world. It didn't happen. It hasn't happened yet. These are points that I've been able to extract from the literature. J.D. Brown from University of Hawaii. When I quote people, I usually quote people that I know. And J.D. Brown, I know very well. He used to be one of my teachers. He's been consistent throughout his career as an applied linguist. There's no empirical spot actually. If you look very carefully in the literature, there's none. Tidak ada. Bukti empirisnya itu nggak ada gitu loh. Yeah? You don't have to understand everything that I say. It's a bahasa Indonesia. And see how you feel. Number 2, when people do look at what is happening in the classroom, they find that teachers actually very rarely, if ever, use what is known as communicative language teaching. And number 3, that's nice. For many years, people have been successful language learners even before CLT was created. Now, this is something that is important for us to understand. The assumptions behind CLT. What are some of the assumptions? Number 1, CLT research and pedagogy should be informed by native speaker models. I'm not saying this is a bad thing or a good thing. This is just the explicit or implicit assumptions. Number 2, the culture or the cultural content of ELT should be derived from the cultures of native speakers of English. These 2 assumptions are the foundation of CLT, whether you like it or not. Yeah? So if you truly believe in CLT and if you implement CLT fully, you have to believe in these 2 assumptions. You have to follow what is mandated by the 2 assumptions. Not possible for you. You don't even know what English people looks like. You do, of course. I'm exaggerating. Yeah? Let me give you a quiz. I'm going to show you 2 photographs. Imagine that you are in a position to hire a new English teacher in your school or in your language center. Which one would you go for? When I show these photographs to people, they would go for this girl. She's nice. She is a wonderful teacher. Yeah? But she is not a native speaker of English. She's not. She is from Brazil, actually. So English is a foreign language to her. But many people feel that if you look like somebody like this, then you must be a native speaker of English. That's why you should be, hired as an English teacher. This is another thing about CLT. Another assumption about CLT is this, that you need to develop what is known as native speaker accent. Yeah? Native speaker accent. I think, again, this is a myth. This is a big myth. You do not have to speak like native speakers. Ibu Grace this morning was wonderful. Pak Diding was really a great speaker. And I have to mention Bapak Presiden TEFLIN, Pak Fuad. He's a great speaker. Yeah? So in the classroom, when you teach pronunciation, do not force your students to speak like somebody from other countries. Yeah? Tell your students, hey, listen to me. Me means you. Yeah? You means me. So that actually is one implication. The implication is very clear. You need to speak in a way that is this, comprehensible and intelligible. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be understood, easily understood. Yeah? And recently, there's new developments, and people are no longer talking about native speaker culture, but they talk about international culture. And native speaker culture is part of the international culture that you need to introduce to your students, simply because when the students go out of Singapore, of Indonesia, they will come in contact with other people who speak English, who come from Thailand, who come from Cambodia, who come from India, and many other places. So it's a good idea for you to introduce the different cultures of these people, so that your communication becomes more smooth, so to speak. And also learners' own culture is important too. The reason is very simple, because the students may want to be able to talk about their own culture to other people. That only. Yeah? Bukan karena patriotis atau apa, itu boleh sih. Tapi more importantly, students need also to be able to use English to communicate with other people and talk about their own culture. So that's not a bad thing. Actually, it's a good thing. Yeah? The big notion, I think Ibu Chris also touched on this early on, is intercultural intercultural competence. This is my favorite. Higher level processes are more important than lower level processes in language learning. Is it a fact or is it a myth? When you go to conferences, people talk about HOTS. They never talk about cold, but always HOTS, H-O-T-S. Higher order thinking skills, critical thinking skills, things like making inferences, hypothesizing, doing top-down processing, and things like that. Are these important? I think so, they're important. But for whom? For whom? For our students who are still not able to put 3 words together to make a sentence, and you are teaching them critical thinking skills, I think that's not true. I think that's not a good idea. Yeah? So what I'm suggesting is, maybe, since we are dealing with lower proficiency learners of English, we should pay a bit more attention to lower level processes. Lower level doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Lower level is good because we are teaching students how to speak English, how to write in English. So this is something that I would like to share with you. When you look at students' level of proficiency, I think you can do something else. In Singapore, it's here. Students from class 1, from primary 1, already know how to speak English. They know how to speak English. Yeah? So it makes sense for the teachers to pay a little bit more attention on critical thinking skills, higher order questions, and things like that. And that makes a lot of sense when you teach students in Bahasa Indonesia. It makes perfect sense. But not in English. Not yet, because your students are still at the phase known as learning to learn English. Gitu. Yeah? So my position is this. Our students lack the language skill, not the thinking skills. If you want to teach thinking skills, that's fine. But don't expect your students to improve on their proficiency as a result of your teaching them higher order thinking skills. I think you should focus more on language development and not critical thinking skills. the term bottom-up processing has become such a bad name that people sort of avoid using bottom-up processing. I think bottom-up processing is what our students need to be able to do fluently and efficiently. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Here's an example. This data here coming from China. China is TEFL like in Indonesia. The researcher asked a group of college students the kind of problems that they encounter when they listen. Listening is the most difficult. And these people said these are things that make listening in English very hard for them. Kalau kecil. Here. Number one adalah speed, the rate of speaking. That's too fast for most people. So authentic native speaker speech is just out of the question basically. It's just too fast. Or if you still want to use authentic materials, you will need to adjust the speed. Make it really, really slow so that students can catch the words. Number two, because of that they get distracted very easily. Makes sense. Number three, this is interesting. Word recognition. That is lower level processes actually. Word recognition skills. What is interesting is when they see the words, they can tell, that word. But when they hear the word, they miss the word completely. So it's an issue of word recognition skill in listening. New vocabulary also accounts for like 90%. It's difficult because they don't understand many words. So if this is the case, try telling your students you don't have to understand every word, and they will fall in love with you. Seriously. That's not the way to go. Yeah? So what? What is the solution? I have some solution for you. I hope you like it. I believe you will like it. I'm sure you will like it. Number one, just adjust the speed. Nowadays, it's very easy to adjust the speed. The students themselves can adjust the speed if you have a machine in front of them. Yeah? With DVD players and things like that, they can adjust the speed. Number two, targeted practice of problem sounds. So spend a few minutes with your students. Okay, when you hear these two words pronounced together, this is what the two words sound like. Very brief, very simple exercise. The next one is important. This you cannot do without. You need to do this very, very often in order for you to get used to the sounds in connected speech in English. Next one, very simple idea. Reading while listening is a good idea. Who says it's a bad idea? People who are a strong believer of CLT would tell you that, hey, that is not authentic. Anything that is not authentic should not be used in the classroom because it's harmful. I'll tell you that this is very healthy. It will help your students develop their listening skills. And number two, I must mention this, subtitle. When the students watch videos and they don't understand what is happening, get them to turn on the subtitle. In other words, they're doing reading and listening at the same time. And a lot of narrow listening or viewing. Narrow listening means listening to the same type of videos if you like. For example, here you have Sesame Street, Friends, the same people talking about the same thing on a daily basis is extremely very good to develop that level of confidence in listening to English. Yeah? Number four. This is a very popular belief. Learners should produce language as early as possible. Is it a myth or a fact? Don't say anything yet. Listen to me first and then we'll decide together whether it's more myth than fact. I think this belief came about because of the introduction of CLT, with a lot of emphasis on talking, on interactions and things like that. And the popular belief also reinforces this idea. You learn to speak by Speaking. Can you say that together with me? You want to speak by speaking. For many, many years, I believed that that was the case. I don't think so. It is not possible. It's not possible. You don't develop your speaking ability by speaking. Something else must have happened before you are able to produce. Speaking, yes, it's useful, but speaking is not the cause, it's the result of something else.